Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
She walked up to that referee, hands clapping, eyes locked, voice raised. And he stood there and hit her with a technical foul. On a night she was cooking. On a night the Fever were up 14. On a night she was well on her way to 24 points and 9 assists. That right there is the image that burned into every Fever fan's memory on Wednesday night. And that is where we are going to start. Because a win happened. The final score was 8-7-7-8 Indiana. The Fever got off the schneid. Caitlin Clark reminded the league why she is the most important player in women's basketball. And yet somehow, some way, a referee named Jason Alabanza found a reason to make the night about himself. I'm Dre Fiver. This is Street Hoops. No filter, no sugarcoating, no corporate media spin. Just the game, the drama, and everything they don't want to say on television. Pull up a chair because tonight we are going deep. On the win, on the officiating disgrace, on the Kelsey Mitchell elephant in the room, and on the most unexpected development of the early 2026 WNBA season. Caitlin Clark might be turning into one of the best downhill drivers in the entire league, and nobody on your timeline is talking about it properly. Let's get into it. First, the Indiana took care of a Los Angeles Sparks team that, let's be honest, was not the juggernaut some people had hyped them up to be entering this season. The Sparks are a flawed roster and it showed throughout this game. Their offense, without the pieces that made it functional last season, is a noticeably diminished operation. Jordan Canada is gone, and for those who are not paying close attention to the structural details, Jordan Canada was the glue of that Sparks offense. She was the initiator, the pace setter, the player who made every other piece around her work. Without her, the Sparks are going to struggle to generate the same quality of shot creation that made them competitive. What you are left with is Kelsey Plum putting up 25 in a losing effort and a cast around her that is not consistently capable of supplementing that production with enough efficiency to win games. Erica Wheeler was not a factor. The team's interior presence was unreliable, and multiple players who were supposed to provide depth gave the Sparks essentially nothing on a night when Indiana needed a victory. That is not a slight against the Fever. A win is a win, and you take them regardless of the opponent's limitations. But context matters. Indiana won this game at 10:30 at night Eastern Time, which historically has not been a favorable window for this team. They were on the road. They were coming off the pain of a season-opening loss. And they still went out and handled business. Credit where it is due. Now let us talk about the best player on the floor. Because despite everything that happened, despite the technical foul and the 1 of 7 from three-point range, the best player in this game was Caitlin Clark. 24 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 block, 9 of 17 from the field. That is not a rough shooting night. That is a player who, even when the three ball is not cooperating, finds ways to impact the game at an elite level across every dimension. The first 2 minutes of this game, she had 7 points. 7 points before the crowd had finished settling in. And that energy, that pace-setting explosiveness, dictated the terms of engagement for the entire first half. Kelsey Mitchell was incredible in that first half. No question, no debate, no asterisk. She had 19 points in the first 2 quarters. She was rolling, she was getting her spots. She was converting at a rate that looked like she was going to take the game completely over. But here is what actually happened. She did not. The second half came, and Mitchell went from a player who looked unstoppable to a player who was shooting 2 of 8 from the field in the back half of the game. 7 of 9 in the first half became 9 of 17 overall. The explosion did not sustain itself. And in that vacuum, Clark stepped in and made the plays that closed the game out when it needed to be closed. Because let me tell you something, and this is important. The Fever nearly blew a 19-point lead in the fourth quarter. Nearly. There were some genuinely shaky moments down the stretch where a team that should have been putting this game away was instead allowing the Sparks back within striking distance. It was Clark who made the critical plays when the margin was shrinking. It was Clark who had the basketball in the moments that actually determined the final score. That is what the game's best player does. You do not need the big first half. You need the moments that actually decide whether you win or lose. And on Wednesday night, those moments belonged to Caitlin Clark. Now let us talk about the development that nobody is putting enough attention on. And Dre is going to say it plainly, because that is what this channel is for. Caitlin Clark is quietly becoming one of the best downhill drivers in the WNBA. Not one of the best guards, who occasionally drives, not a perimeter player who dabbles in the paint when defenses sag off her. One of the best downhill scoring drivers in the entire league. And that is a sentence that would not have made sense to write about her 18 months ago. Before this season, Clark was primarily understood as a transcendent shooter, a generational passer and facilitator, an elite intelligence player. Getting to the rim and finishing through contact was not the primary feature of her offensive identity. In 2026, something has changed. Whether it is a conscious response to the cold shooting percentages from three in these early games, whether it is a scheme adjustment Stephanie White has implemented, or whether this is simply Clark expanding her game into territory defenses have foolishly left open by camping out beyond the arc. It does not matter why. What matters is that it is happening. And here is the thing about that development that makes it truly dangerous for every team in this league going forward. Defenses have spent 2 full seasons preparing specifically for Clark's three-point shot. Their entire game plan is built around getting a hand in her face from distance and not allowing her the catch-and-shoot rhythm that makes her nearly unguardable from deep. When that is your entire defensive strategy against a player, and that player suddenly starts torching you in the paint instead, you are fundamentally unprepared. The adjustments that work against her shooting game do not work against her driving game. The physical presence you need at the rim to stop her paint attack leaves open space for her three-point shot when she pulls back. Either she is burning you downhill, or she's burning you from distance. There is no defensive scheme that stops both simultaneously. And if the three-point percentage creeps back to even a respectable number, get it to 30%, get it to Sabrina Ionescu's 2025 numbers, which is not an outrageous standard. Then Clark becomes genuinely unguardable in a way she has not been at any previous point in her professional career. The irony is that the poor three-point shooting that has dominated the conversation about her early 2026 games may actually be the thing that unlocks a more complete, harder-to-stop version of her offensive game. If teams keep daring her to drive, she is going to keep driving. And if she keeps driving at the efficiency she showed against the Sparks, those teams are going to have a very serious problem on their hands. Preseason, Clark herself declared she is the best transition player in the league. A lot of people laughed at that. Nobody is laughing at what they are seeing from her in the paint right now. Now let us have the real conversation, the one that some analysts want to dance around because it involves saying something that might be perceived as critical of a player who is not the villain of this story. The Kelsey Mitchell situation on this Indiana Fever team is a genuine structural conversation that needs to be had. And I want to be absolutely precise about what I am saying because nuance matters here. Kelsey Mitchell is an elite scorer. She averaged a career-high 20.2 points per game last season. She led the entire WNBA in three-pointers made. She is a legitimate star who carried this franchise through one of the most difficult stretches in its recent history. While Clark was injured, she deserves every accolade she has received. None of that is in dispute. What is in dispute is whether this offense is currently designed to maximize the player who gives Indiana the highest ceiling, or whether it is designed around a framework that made sense when Clark was absent and has not yet been fully recalibrated now that she is back and healthy. Because what the film from these first 2 games is showing is a system where Mitchell is receiving plays designed specifically to create her looks from the perimeter and at the basket, while Clark is being used heavily as a distributor who is not consistently being reintegrated as a scoring option after she facilitates. She kicks it out, she makes the read, she creates the look, and then the ball does not find its way back to her in a rhythm that maximizes her own production. That imbalance is part of the explanation for why Clark is 1 of 7 from 3. She is not getting high-quality catch-and-shoot rhythm opportunities from distance at the same rate that Mitchell is. And when the best shooter in the history of women's collegiate basketball is going 1 of 7 from 3, the first question should never be about her mechanics. The first question should be about the quality of the looks she is receiving it. Now here is another Indiana Fever conversation that needs to be had and that nobody in mainstream coverage wants to put front and center. The bench. Specifically, the disaster zone that is this team's depth beyond Myesha Hines-Allen and Raven Johnson. Because while Clark and Mitchell were doing their thing at the top of the rotation, the supporting cast, particularly in the front court, was giving Indiana nothing of substance. And at the center of that conversation is a name that has been floating around this franchise for 2 seasons now. Damiris Dantas. Dantas played 11 minutes against the Sparks. She grabbed 1 rebound. She gave up 6 points by refusing to run back on defense. In a professional basketball game, a paid professional athlete making a decision not to run back on defense. And she bricked 3 after 3 after 3 from the perimeter at a rate that should make every Fever fan genuinely uncomfortable about what this team has chosen to put on the floor at that position. This is not a player who has had a rough start to the season. This is a player who was statistically one of the least productive rotation players on a WNBA team last year and who re-signed with the Fever in April. The Fever have Aliyah Boston as an elite anchor in the post. Everything else behind Boston in the front court rotation right now is a liability, and Dantas represents the low end of that problem. Here is the uncomfortable arithmetic of this situation. Damiris Dantas on the floor is a negative for this Indiana team. The plus-minus tells the story if the film does not do it on its own. Her defensive positioning is a problem. Her spacing when she is not making shots, and she is not making shots, is a problem. And the decision-making on whether to run back on defense is frankly a problem that should not exist at the professional level. The suggestion that Raven Johnson, a guard, would be a more productive option at center than Dantas is not as outrageous as it sounds when you watch how much damage Dantas is causing on the defensive end and how little she is contributing offensively. Johnson, by the way, is barely in the rotation right now, which is a separate conversation about how Stephanie White is managing her depth that deserves its own examination. Now let us get to the moment that lit the internet on fire. The technical foul. Because everything we just covered, the win, the shooting, the bench situation, all of it exists in the shadow of what happened in the final 20 seconds of the first half. Clark was called for an offensive foul. Ariel Atkins went to the floor, and the referee gave Indiana the call. Clark, who had been navigating contact all night without getting the whistle in her favor, walked over to referee Jason Alabanza and made her feelings known. She was loud. She was clapping. She was a professional competitor who believed she was being cheated by the officiating, and expressed that in the direct language of someone who has been swallowing questionable calls all game long. The official let it go initially. He heard her. He processed it. He decided once that it did not rise to the level of a technical foul. And then Clark kept talking, and he changed his mind. Right there on the floor in the final seconds before halftime, against a player who was winning and playing some of the best basketball of her young career, he reversed his tolerance and issued the technical. Kelsey Mitchell took the technical free throw to open the third quarter. The Fever still won, but that call, that decision, that specific moment involving that specific official, it cannot be swept under the rug just because the score went Indiana's way. Here is what you need to know about this pattern. Clark now has 9 technical fouls in her WNBA career. 6 came in her rookie season alone. 1 short of an automatic suspension, 2 came in an injury-shortened 2025. And now 1 more to open 2026. 9 career technicals for expressing competitive frustration in a league that markets physicality, toughness, and fire as core elements of its brand identity. 9 career technicals for a player who has documented evidence that she receives more hard contact without whistle protection than arguably any other star in this league. The fine structure under the new collective bargaining agreement means each of her first 3 technicals this season will cost her $500. Compare that to the $200 the league fined her in 2025 for posting about referees on social media after a playoff win while she was sitting injured in street clothes. The escalation in financial consequence has not been matched by any escalation in officiating transparency or accountability. Fans absolutely lost it when this call dropped. Social media was on fire within minutes of the halftime buzzer. One fan writing that this specific referee, quote, hates her, and that the call was embarrassingly soft. Others calling out the pattern, same issues, same officials, same lack of protection for the league's most commercially significant player, game after game after season after season after season. Now, social media anger is not evidence on its own. You know I am not going to pretend that 500 upset fans in a comment section proves institutional bias. But when those same 500 fans in that comment section are saying the same things they said the game before, and the game before that, and the season before that, you stop dismissing it as noise and start asking why the signal is so consistent. The WNBA is in a historic growth moment. The salary cap went from $1.5 million in 2025 to $7 million in 2026. Players who were making $66,000 a year in a major professional sports league, not a recreational league, a professional sports league, are now making $270,000 at the minimum. That is the correct direction. That is a league finally beginning to compensate its talent at a level approaching what their labor generates. But institutional growth is not just about the money. It is about the infrastructure that supports the product. And the officiating accountability infrastructure of this league has not grown alongside the financial reality. Transparency about referee assignments, performance evaluation processes, formal mechanisms for players and coaches to raise documented concerns about specific officials, none of that exists in any public-facing form that suggests the league takes it seriously. Here is the bottom line on the officiating situation. The WNBA cannot continue to have its most important commercial asset involved in recurring, documented, visible officiating controversies with specific officials and respond with silence and fine structures. That is not a sustainable model for a league that is trying to grow its audience, deepen its commercial relationships, and be taken seriously as a major professional sports entity. The fans who are new to this league because of Caitlin Clark are watching these moments. They are forming opinions about whether this league is worth their continued investment, and what they are seeing is not encouraging. Let us close on the things that actually deserve genuine recognition from Wednesday night, because this channel gives credit where credit is due. The free throw shooting was excellent. Indiana shot 87% from the line. That is the kind of efficiency that holds up under pressure, that compounds over a long season. That is the difference between teams that close games and teams that hand victories back. The rebounding was improved. Indiana outrebounded the Sparks by 7. Those are real steps in the right direction after the defensive and effort struggles that defined the Dallas loss. But the 16 turnovers remain an issue that cannot be dismissed just because the Sparks matched that sloppiness with 19 of their own. Indiana cannot build a championship run on the assumption that every opponent is going to gift them back every mistake they make. 16 turnovers against a disciplined defense will get you beaten. That number needs to come down. The talent is there. The execution when the ball is moving and the reads are right is elite. And 1-8-5 run to close the second quarter showed you exactly what this team is capable of when everyone is locked in and moving with purpose. The goal for the rest of this season is making that level of execution the baseline, not the occasional peak. And then there is the thing that should genuinely have everyone excited about, where this Fever team is going. Caitlin Clark is 24 years old. She just put up 24 points and 9 assists in a road win on a night her primary weapon was not firing. She made the plays that decided the game when the game needed deciding. She is developing a downhill dimension that nobody prepared for. She is 1 assist away from setting a record for 20 in 10 games in WNBA history. And this is her 3rd professional season. The ceiling here is genuinely frightening for the rest of this league. The three-point shooting will come back. Get it to 30%. That is not a bold ask for the most prolific long-range shooter in the history of women's basketball. Get it to 30, and give her the rhythm catches and the design sets that create the looks her skill level deserves. And the conversation at the end of this season might be about a player who just won MVP. That is where this is heading if the pieces come together the way they should. This is Dre Fiver. You have been watching Street Hoops. If this breakdown hit the way it should, smash that like button right now, because the algorithm needs to push this conversation to everyone it belongs to. Drop your take in the comments. Did that technical foul deserve to be called? Is the Fever offense secretly built around Mitchell at Clark's expense? And is Caitlin Clark quietly becoming the best downhill driver in the WNBA? I want every single one of your opinions. And if you found this channel tonight and you are not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that button. Street Hoops is where the real basketball conversation lives. No filter, no safe takes, just the game, the truth, and the drama. We will see you on the next one.